Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of Fill in the Blink, where we fill you in on everything business and tech. I'm Neha, and this is Hassan, and today we're celebrating our 1 year anniversary of Fill in the Blink.
All right. Woohoo.
So, today's episode is about how to create a scalable business. And I think that's a very important topic these days because, gone are the days of, growth at all costs.
Yeah.
And given the current economic climate that we're in right now, it's time to focus on healthy growth that is sustainable.
Exactly.
So the thing is with a lot of businesses is that they do reach a certain growth point, but after that they hit a ceiling and then they can no longer grow further than that.
Yeah.
And there are businesses that do tend to, go past that and, achieve a massive scale.
Yeah.
So Hassan, what would you say
Yeah.
can make, a business scalable?
All right. So, on a very fundamental level, scale is about increasing the output by increasing the input. It can be linear or it can be exponential. That depends on how the business takes its approach and the nature of the business, right? But essentially, on a very basic level, if you invest $1 in a business and you're getting half a dollar in return, will you get $2 in return if you invest $4 in the business, right? So traditional businesses like factories, they follow a very linear scale. Imagine a factory with 200 employees producing, let's say, 1,000 units of a refrigerator in a year. If they increase their headcount to, let's say, 400, they'll be able to double their output, right? So they will be following a very linear trajectory, right? On the other hand, software businesses, they tend to follow exponential scale, right? So meaning that they can keep their costs the same, but exponentially grow in their revenue, right? So I think one of the best example that comes to mind is WhatsApp, where almost a 50% team was able to create almost $20 billion of value, right?
So I think that's pretty cool that, businesses can, keep a constant headcount, but, keep growing their output year on year.
Yeah.
And so, but, how would that sort of translate to a software as a service business, like Blink or other B2B
Right.
cloud-based businesses? How can businesses like that, achieve scale?
All right, great question. So there are two main approaches for it. The first one being product-led growth, and the other one being sales-led growth, right? So we'll talk about product-led growth first, right? So it is essentially when your product is the main driver of your growth, right? You're not relying on teams, salespeople, etc., but the product itself is enabling you to grow, right? So for example, companies like Slack, companies like Canva, all they need is people landing on their websites, signing up, and if needed, swiping the card to get all the premium offering, right? So all of this can be done without human intervention. And they've also figured out a referral model, right? So they can keep on growing and increasing their user base without having to rely on human capital.
Right. So, so that's how product-led growth is achieved.
Yeah.
But then there's also sales-led growth. So, for Blink, for example, B2B and or other B2B cloud-based businesses, sales-led growth strategies basically involve a very precise sales process, and that starts from marketing to sales to onboarding to customer success. And they ensure that they keep on acquiring and retaining more and more customers predictably. But the challenge that such B2B businesses at least face is that the sales cycle is really long, and it does take sometimes longer to get the customer to achieve value as well.
Exactly.
So I think that's, the problem, one of the challenges that is there. The product market fit might be there, but there's still a sales push that is required because the product is somewhat complex and requires manual onboarding or like customer support, customer success. So human intervention is required along various steps. So sales-led growth would be somewhere where that push is required.
Yeah, you mentioned two very important pieces here. The first one being predictability, and the second being achieving time to value for the customer, right? So these are two very crucial things to optimize. How do we do it at Blink here, Neha?
So the process that we have here at Blink is that, marketing brings in a lead. The lead is then given to the salesperson. They contact them for a demo. Then, they sign the contract, then they're shifted to onboarding. They set their website and apps up, make them go live, and then they're transferred on to customer success, who then, work on their growth week on week, year on year, month on month.
Exactly.
And, they're basically there for every step that requires some form of human intervention.
All right. Yeah. So I think that's a very important aspect of the sales-led growth model, right? But even companies that are PLG companies, they require somewhat of a enterprise sales motion. So, for example, the ones we talked about, Slack and Canva, right? They do have enterprise sales team, right? So, for example, if you are Slack and you want to win a client that is, let's say, a big consulting firm, right? And you have to, let's say, displace Microsoft, right? So you would require the same processes, the same people, the same team. It will not be a case of, one employee within the consulting firm referring it to the entire organization, but the folks at Slack would need to enable the decision for the consulting firm, right? So having an enterprise sales motion is very critical, even for PLG companies. And that is why it's never an either or question. It's always about finding the right mix between PLG and SLG.
So that's really interesting that, one company can have both product-led growth and sales-led growth, because again, each different scenario requires different processes, right?
Exactly.
And, now that we've sort of covered PLG and SLG, what would you say do these businesses actually need to achieve scalability?
Right. Yeah. So I think there are three main things that are required, not just for high growth companies, but like every startup or every company.
Right.
And they are funding, talent, and processes. Right. So when it comes to funding, it can be a matter of the company or the startup being bootstrapped versus backed by external investors. When it comes to talent, you need the top talent in the right places to get things done, right? So you need talent. And when you have the combination of two, you need processes in place so that you can capitalize on having the funding and the talent required to grow exponentially.
Okay, so funding, talent, and processes.
Yes.
So I think when we talk about funding, for example, Blink is a VC-backed startup, and that has allowed us to focus our sales-led growth trajectory in two different markets. So that's something that, that VC backing has allowed us to do. And not only that, it's also allowing us to, spend more on product, more on tech, sales and marketing, because again, we do need that push to, actually grow. And that has, increased our annual recurring revenue and, is helping us reach sustainability. So I think, having that sort of backing and funding is very important.
No, 100%, you are right. So just having a killer product is not sufficient. You need to invest in people so that they can take care of the distribution, so your product gets to your customers.
Yeah, no, so when it does come to talent, I think a startup needs a bunch of people that are go-getters, that have that drive. They're willing to take risks, they're willing to experiment and, keep iterating their processes and, actually getting that end, that result that helps them, achieve growth and achieve their targets. And I'm really proud to say that we at Blink have a really great team of a bunch of go-getters who are like, getting things done. But Hassan, can you please explain what you meant? So we covered funding and talent. So what about processes? How would you, explain that?
All right, all right. So basically, when we talk about processes, it's actually about mapping the entire customer journey and ideally having all of that documented, right? So you need to be aware of all the different phases that a customer would be interacting with your organization with. And ideally, you need to have each phase documented with proper steps and whoever is responsible for getting them done. Yeah, so when it comes to processes, basically what we mean is you should have your entire customer journey mapped out, ideally in a documentation, right? So essentially, whatever the touch points are that your customers are interacting with you on, from awareness to eventually finding value, all of that needs to be mapped out. Everybody needs to be aware of what they are responsible for, and they need to be held accountable for those particular segments. And then there's a very famous saying that you cannot improve what you do not measure, right? So measuring everything, setting
Right.
up KPIs and tracking everything is super important here, right?
Yeah.
So this will give you the opportunities to identify areas where you can optimize and
Right.
further reduce the time it takes for your customers to achieve value, right?
Right, right.
So that is why documentation is super important, processes are super important, and ideally it all feeds into an enablement function that is helping not just your existing colleagues, but imagine you hire a new colleague in sales, you make them grow through an onboarding program, and you ramp them up as soon as possible so they can straight away get to smashing their quotas and helping the companies grow.
Right. So you pick anybody off the street,
Yeah,
put them in your company, and then they can, just
exactly.
keep getting those numbers. And
That's the best case scenario, like ideally.
I think one of the things with process like tracking and documentation is that if you're doing experiments,
Yeah,
you can actually measure how like which experiment is actually working and which one is not. So if you're not
100%.
measuring, you won't know. If you're going off of vibes, you're never going to
Exactly.
actually grow and learn from what you're doing, right?
Exactly.
I think that's really important. Like processes, especially really important if you're looking to grow month on month and year on year.
100%.
Right, right. I think this was a very important conversation to have.
Yeah.
Because
And important timing as well.
important timing for sure. So thank you for filling me in on this,
Likewise,
Hassan.
likewise.
And I will see everybody else in the next episode.
All right.